Orlando, Florida, a tropical oasis where the weather stays a constant 70 to 80 degrees year-round with blue skies, right? Well, I wish that was the case, but it simply isn't the case anywhere here in Florida. Florida is a huge state, and the weather varies quite a bit throughout this huge state. Today, I'm going to be going over 7 points to describe what the weather is like in Orlando, or more specifically, up on the north side of town where I live. These aren't in any particular order, but stick around for number 7 because that's the one that shocked me the most when I moved from Michigan to Florida many years ago, and I bet it's going to surprise you too. I'm Chuck Shaver, and I'm a local realtor, and I do all sorts of videos on what it's like to eat, sleep, live, or whatever here in Central Florida. If that's the information that you want, be sure to hit those like and subscribe buttons and click that little bell so that you're notified whenever I post other videos just like this. Now, let's get on to what the weather is like here in the Orlando, Florida area. First, I know that many of you watching this live up north, and I know all too well that your summers get hot, and sometimes they're just as hot or even hotter than it is down here. The big difference here is the length of our season. Here in the Orlando area, it'll regularly hit the mid-90s from May through probably September, and we'll often have a couple days hitting 100 degrees. In the heat of the summer, the overnight lows will be in the mid-70s, which really isn't too bad if you're an early bird like me, but it's still pretty muggy out there. Speaking of that muggy, we've got plenty of humidity. Now, over on the beaches, the humidity isn't quite as bad as it is here in the Orlando area, as those ocean breezes have pretty much died down. Now, yes, everyone here in this area has air conditioning. It does provide plenty of relief, but if you've got to walk across, say, a parking lot just to get to your office or into a grocery store, you're going to be sweating by the time you get to that AC. Some people say your blood thins out and you get used to it, but that really hasn't happened for me. You know, I still complain about the heat pretty much the same way I did when I was a kid when I moved here, and I bet you will too. Sticking with our theme of the hot summer heat, let's address the afternoon thunderstorms that heat brings. From probably May through, September, we see afternoon thunderstorms on a daily basis, and sometimes you can almost set your clock by them. You know, it'll be 3:30 in the afternoon and that blistering sun is beating down, and then like 15 minutes later it's clouded up and pouring. These storms are often going to last just 30 to 45 minutes, and then the sun's going to be right back out and you can go back to doing whatever you were doing. While these storms can be a pain in the neck, they do cool things down and they can make a really hot afternoon into a really nice cool evening. These afternoon storms bring out a good bit of lightning too, and it can be pretty dangerous. I read an article that said that Florida has over twice as many lightning-related deaths than any other state in the last 10 years. I've also heard it said over the years that most of the lightning strikes occur in the area over the west near Tampa to over on the east coast down near Titusville, but that's still in our area. Usually, lightning is near front, and we usually know when it's coming, but I'll be the first to say that I thought it wouldn't happen to me, but I know people that have been struck by lightning, so I do take it seriously. It isn't that we don't go outside or anything like that, but if I'm at the beach or out on the water fishing, I'm going to pay attention to what's going on in those skies. Now, I've painted a pretty ugly picture of all this heat, but don't get me wrong, it can be gorgeous here from like October through April, and this is why so many snowbirds head down here in the late fall. Orlando has all sorts of theme parks, lakes, and rivers that are in my opinion, they're much better in the winter months. Highs in the 70s or low 80s are a daily occurrence in the winter months, and for holidays, we're usually doing something outdoors. We usually eat our Thanksgiving and Christmas dinners on the picnic tables because the weather is so nice. It also helps with the crowds. In the winter, it tends to rain less, so blue sky days are almost an expectation. This gorgeous weather, combined with the lack of any snowfall whatsoever, is one of the many reasons that Florida is a prime destination for so many snowbirds. Florida is the sunshine state, and that's because we've got a lot of it. It's a rarity when we have a whole day of clouds, something that I believe is vastly different than it is up north. If I wake up and it's cloudy, my expectation is usually that those clouds are going to move out in, say, the next couple hours. When that happens, the sun's power usually shows up. Here in the Orlando area, cracked dashboards and faded paint is about as common as those rusted fenders that you have up north from those salty roads. Sunshades and car windshields are very common here too, as they help to protect those dashboards and keep your butt from frying when you place it in the driver's seat. Whenever we're outside for any length of time, we've got sunscreen. While it seems to be worse in the summer months, that sun is just as strong in the winter months, and getting a sunburn is a real thing outside the heat of the summer. Next, let's talk about hurricanes, because they're a real thing in the Orlando area. Now, they aren't anything that is part of our daily lives, and some years they aren't a thing at all. But some years we'll have 4 or 5 hurricanes, one of which will impact us here in the Central Florida area. We typically know when a hurricane is coming for several days, maybe even a week or so in advance, so it's nothing that ever catches us by surprise. You know, the media is all over that, and it's the subject of all sorts of small talk. Usually they turn out to be nothing, but there are a lot of could-bes that never really materialize. However, when we start believing that a hurricane is coming our way, we're making sure that our generators work, maybe we're boarding up our windows and picking up the yard debris, or if it's projected to be a bad one, sometimes people are even leaving to go to someone else's house that may be better equipped. Many people living in mobile homes or those over on the beaches, they're often the ones making the first move. At my house, there's usually a crowd of friends and family, and we're making a party of it. There's usually plenty of food, plenty of drink and games, and we're making sure that all of our electrical devices are fully charged, even though our cell service is often impacted by a hurricane. We've got a whole house generator which gives us hot water for showers, and it covers most of our appliances. The grill has plenty of propane, and that's pretty much the way we're cooking most everything. I live in a very remote area, so the power is often out for a couple days, although we did have one that kept us for, 8 days or so a couple years back. In town, some people never lose their power, but they could be out for a day or so too. When a hurricane does come, we're usually preparing for the worst and hoping for the best. I've been through many hurricanes and I've seen both circumstances. The beaches tend to fare worse than we do here in the Orlando area as these storms come in off that warm Gulf Coast or the Atlantic waters and they land on the beaches. They usually lose a good bit of their steam before they get inland to Orlando. I believe that most of us here in Orlando downplay hurricanes, but we're well aware of the devastation that they've had in other areas like Homestead, Fort Myers, or even up in New Orleans over the years where so many lost everything, including family and friends. Now this sounds pretty grim, and it's a reality of the weather here in Orlando, but it isn't really a part of our daily life. Most of what I've addressed about the Orlando area weather so far has had to do with the summer heat, but rest assured, it gets cold here too. The average highs in January and February are in the low to mid 70s, and the average lows are in the low to mid 50s here in Orlando. It will usually drop to freezing, once or twice a year, but up on the north side of Orlando, and out on the west, it'll freeze 4 or 5 times each winter, and it'll often stay below freezing for several hours. Now, it doesn't snow or anything like that, although I have seen flurries here a couple times over the years. It was really just fun for a novelty. But I've got citrus trees and avocado trees that I spend quite a bit of time trying to protect, and we often need to cover our landscaping too. In the cold mornings, we still need to warm up our cars, just like we do up north, and we're going to wear more jackets and blue jeans than we do shorts, although I'm still wearing shorts quite a bit during the winter. Here in Orlando, we're just 45 minutes from the beaches, and it seems like everyone in Florida has a swimming pool. Now, you might think that highs in the mid-80s or so would be warm enough to keep those pools warm, but our swimming pools are empty all winter, and while there are still plenty of people over at the beach soaking up that sunlight, there aren't too many people in those waters. Now, maybe the picture I painted here doesn't really show the bright side, but I've come to love the weather here in Orlando area, especially in the winters. Yes, I do miss the fall leaves and the spring flowers up north, but I'm happy to trade some of that for the ability to not even own a snow shovel or ever have to concern myself with driving on icy roads again. I've learned to cope with the heat, and when you consider that most of our days are spent in the air conditioning and that our outdoor recreation often includes water, it really isn't that bad. The afternoon storms are brief, as are the winter freezes, and the hurricanes are predicted well in advance and they don't even happen every year. If you'd like to know more about the Orlando area, check out one of my other videos. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.